Hey, what's going on, guys? I'm going to talk today about Colombia and the Korean War. And Young News will do these 60-minute specials, not like the American TV show 60 Minutes. They talk about topics that are more agreeable and historical, a lot less controversial. And on episode 281, they interviewed a Colombian who was living in Korea, working for a Korean chemical company, a guy named Carlos Salazar. And Carlos's maternal grandfather, Alvaro Perdomo, he lives in Colombia, but he served in the Korean War at age 20. And he was there for a year. And he still talks about his service in Korea, and he still thinks he was blessed to go to Korea, and he still thinks he did the right thing. And that's one of the reasons, honestly, that Carlos Salazar chose to work in Korea, was because of his maternal grandfather. And they interviewed Carlos's mother as well, and Carlos's mother said that her father would talk about how cold it was in Korea, because that was a big adjustment, because Colombia is a very, very tropical climate. Now, one similarity they had is the mountainous terrain is very similar to that of Korea. So that's an advantage they had, and that's one reason they fought so well and won many battles. And when they didn't win the battles, they held the enemy off where the enemy didn't advance hardly any further. And you'll see in the video also they interviewed Carlos's maternal uncle named Carlos Perdomo. He's 43 years old. And he is still a soldier in the Colombian army, and he chose to be a soldier because of his father's service in Korea. And then they also interview other Korean War veterans, and the Colombian Korean War veterans that they interviewed, they sailed out of Cartagena, Colombia, and they crossed the Panama Canal, and they went to Hawaii, and then they went to Yokohama, Japan, and they arrived in Korea on June 15th, 1951, 10 days before the one-year anniversary of when the Korean War started. So they arrived shortly before the one-year anniversary of the beginning of the Korean War. And as I've said before, their army sent 4,058 soldiers, and Battalion Colombia nowadays is one of the most efficient and toughest units in the Colombian military. It was back in Korea as well, but Colombia used their involvement in the Korean War to expand their military and become a top-notch military in South America. So the reason Colombia has a lot of successful special forces brigades is because of Battalion Colombia in Korea. So I'm very grateful for that. And the warriors of current Battalion Colombia, they're a major player in keeping drugs out of the United States. So I'm very grateful for their bravery, their courage, and their tenacity. All right. And in Colombia today, you'll see Colombian memorials dedicated to Colombian Korean War veterans. And they have the battles Kumsong and Old Baldy written on the memorials. And Kumsong was the first major engagement that the Colombians were in, and they took 3 Chinese-held hills. And the Battle of Old Baldy, they had to withdraw, but the Chinese losses were so heavy for that battle that the Chinese didn't advance any further. So even though Old Baldy was a defeat on paper, it felt like a victory. And the South Korean Navy, if they have destroyers or vessels that are that need to be given away, or that they've done their time in service, they give to Colombia, and they show the Colombian military how to use it, and those naval vessels do great patrol. And also, you will see that the Colombians felt a lot of compassion towards the Koreans. They felt the Koreans were kind. They were very diligent. And this one Korean kid, he was hanging around the Colombian base, trying to find whatever food he could. He got separated from his family because of the war. And this Colombian soldier snuck him back to Colombia in a bag. The American soldiers threatened to report it, but they ended up not reporting it. So there was compassion on the American soldiers then as well. I didn't think they should have got upset, but at the end of the day, they didn't report it. And this Korean settled in Colombia, and he passed away a few years ago, but he chose to change his name to Gallon. That's the surname of the Colombian soldier who brought him to Colombia. And even though he was more Korean in custom, he felt like Colombia gave him a second chance in life, so he chose to serve in the Colombian army, and he chose to be buried in Colombia. He did visit Korea, and he was grateful to be in Korea and see the land of his birth, but because of what Colombia gave him, he felt like he was a Colombian first. A lot of the Colombian Korean War veterans, many of them have passed on, but some are still alive. But we need to keep their memory alive. When you talk about Colombia and the Korean War, people listen, but at the same time, just due to time, their memory is slowly fading away. And I really wish that wouldn't happen, because that's why Carlos Salazar went to the War Memorial in Seoul, and he talked to people about Colombia and the Korean War and set up some displays and things of that nature. And this one Korean lady said before she talked to Carlos Salazar, that she had no idea that Colombia was in the Korean War. But these are her quotes that she said. But after hearing Carlos Salazar's testimony and stories, she felt the Colombian soldiers' presence in that memorial. And I'm very grateful for Colombia. They were some of the toughest fighters in the Korean War, and they were all volunteers. The Colombians that chose to go to the Korean War were all volunteers. There were no draftees. And we need to keep their memory alive, and South Korea and Colombia relations need to remain strong. So anyways, whoever's doing well, take care. God bless them. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.